Welcome everybody, I'm so glad to have you with me. This should be interesting because we had some fun and different and exciting and one not so good thing happened last month when we did our eBay auction listings, and this is the what sold. We're going to tell you what sold, what went well, what didn't go so well. If you are a Fenton collector or reseller, you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for that because something happened beyond our control that might happen to you too. And so we'll talk about everything. But first I wanted to say thank you so much to our level 2 and 3 members. We start this out as a bonus video for them because they sponsor it. We do a listing of 20 or so items on eBay, and we try to pick things that we think have a good story or might sell for a good price or have just some reason that we think doing a deeper dive would be fun. And this is the wrap up, which is how did it go? What sold? And let's get into it right now because, like I said, we had some interesting things happen this month. So the first item is here, and this is this really lovely pair of silhouettes. They are very pretty. They are blue background. They're from the 1930s, and the blue background is rather unusual. The dancers and the quarters are not so unusual because this is what silhouettes cut from paper in the 1870s in France looked like, and that really was what got people interested in collecting the commercially made ones in the 1920s and 30s, as well as the old ones. So you will see old paper cut silhouettes in similar frames to these because that's the era when the collectors started getting interested. But of course, a lot of companies made them commercially, like these. These are different because it's reverse painted in mirror on the glass as opposed to reverse painted in black. So that makes these a little more special. It was a little hard to get them true to color because of the lighting. I had to be able to show the silver, but this is a little more what they actually look like. And the gal who got them for her daughter, and she's a member and a regular customer. I did some things buy it now because I figured that the people who sponsor this, if they see something they like, I want them to go ahead and be able to get it. I can't always do everything buy it now because some things are too big to drag with me around as I'm traveling to shows, and I had a couple of shows in the middle of this, but these little pieces I was able to do it for, so she bought it $30 at Buy It Now. And I just think they're really cute. I wasn't going to include these because she's giving them to her daughter as a present, but she said she could not wait for Christmas because they were so cute, and her daughter had been a dancer, I guess, in the Macy's parade or something. And so she just thought she had to have them now, and well, now she does. So I can talk about them. This piece did a lot better than I thought. It was 98 cents when it was new. It actually went for over $20, which was a nice surprise. I figured that it could go between 15 and 30, and it hit right in the middle of that. This is the Corgi Popeye on olive oil piece here. I also had olive oil in some sort of a vehicle, but she sold at one of the shows for about the same price. So I think we've established that this is a general price range for these. Corgi's a really well-known toy company in England, and of course Popeye is Popeye, and there are collectors for both. So the combination of the two, well, that was a pretty good thing to have. And even the original 98-cent grease pencil marking did not dissuade the people from paying today's price. This was great too. This is the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and I'm going to show you some of the detail on here. Now, it went for $92. I have a few lunch boxes. I'm going to have one more in this month's level 2 and level 3 membership video, the bonus video that will come out very soon, by the way, if you're a member, so look for that. But take a look at all this. It's just such amazing. The graphics are so amazing. There is their submarine being caught by the giant octopus. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was a very, very popular show in the 1960s on ABC, and it started out as sort of a Cold War kind of story, but it eventually morphed into fantastic undersea creatures and weird alien things. All sorts of things happened at the bottom of the sea. And there's the fellow there. The other thing that he was known, Richard Capehart, the actor, was for being Michael Knight's father in the original Knight Rider, the pilot episode where he dies, but he has many pithy things to say to Michael Knight before he goes. Did not have a thermos, and it did have some wear around the edges and a few little dents, and I tried to be really fair about that in the photos. So it went for $92. I figured it could go somewhere for between there and maybe as much as 150, because in perfect condition with the thermos, this is a pretty hard one to get, and the graphics are so good. In perfect condition, these go for about 300. So I was pleased in the condition that we had it, that we got what we did, and it was a cool thing that we got to send off to a lucky collector. Now here's the first Fenton piece. This Fenton piece is wonderful, beautiful, unusual, and it's sold. And this one actually did go to a member, and I was happy for that because she had a lot of stiff competition. This is just so unusual. It's part of their Landmark series, and it's got the painting with the palm trees on the bottom. And yes, it is Burmese glass, so you'll see the normal color in the light, which I think is just amazing because it's got that great sunset painting and all of that. And really the idea was that the color of the glass went well with the sunset colors. But then, of course, everyone now is really into uranium glass. So this is what it looks like under a black light. And I'm just really tickled that it went to somebody who really loved it and somebody who's in our group of people, because a lot of these are going away. And like I said, we will talk about why that is. This next piece is a good example where if you have a good item and it's in really, really like new condition, you can get away with a subprime listing and still sell the item. I have to say, I had this and one other plate camera that were for sale. This one I described as a whole plate camera. I did not realize that that was a misnomer because the whole plates are actually larger than this could shoot. So I got a little bit of an education, had to add some things to the listing. Thankfully, there were 24 bids, and the people who bid on it understood what they were getting, understood that it was essentially new in the box from about 35 years ago. It's a Seiko Lens, and it is a really nice little unit, the toko that folds down to this very flat form. I don't think this had ever been used. And so because of that, the fact that I did not do the best job of describing it, thankfully didn't bite me. It did get me on the other one. And you know, that's something where sometimes when you're dealing with really complicated things like cameras and watches and things that have a lot of moving parts, you think you know what you need to know, and then you find out what you really needed to know as you go along. So in this case, I got lucky, and I did get $225, which is just what I thought it should go for. So in that regard, I was on the right page. Fred Flintstone Knickerbocker. Now, I have to admit, I'm surprised that these don't sell for more, but I do remember as a kid that there were a lot of them around. And this one has definitely been played with, although he has his felt pieces attached still, and that's what's often ripped off of these guys. So I was pleased that he was complete and intact. He does have a little bit of wear around the hairline. He does have a little bit of griminess here and there. That, well, you know, it's going to limit the amount it would go for, but it did have the original Hanna-Barbera 1961 tag, so we know it's from when the TV show first came out. And the other thing I liked about it is that it was, well, it's Fred, and it's fun, and it was just a big throwback memory for me. I used to love that show when I was a little kid, and so I was just really pleased to see it again. It was made by Knickerbocker in New York. It went for $20 and about $10 shipping, a little more than what it says there. This I was really happy about because this is the Wink Girl apron, and it went to a person whose last name is Wink and lives in the mountain states. And I was really pleased for her that she got it, because obviously that was the appeal to her and the collection. All of these cute little faces. This, of course, is supposed to represent the sassy Wink Girl. And yes, that's what they called young women back in the 60s. They were still called girls. Women's lib hadn't happened yet. And the Wink Girl would ride around in a van with a big Wink soda bottle on it and give out samples. And they did basically a taste test long before Pepsi ever thought to do it, and went around the United States and introduced their product that way. It was a big success for a long time, but I just really loved the graphic. I just thought that was the best thing about it. And so she got it for $11 on 2 bids. You know, aprons don't typically sell for much, but advertising gives you a premium. So this might have been a $3 or $4 apron if it wasn't for the fact that it was advertising. This went for $20 on 1 bid plus shipping, and that's about the right price for these because there are a fair number of these around, even though it is old. This is from the centennial of the B&O Railroad. They then issued another one for the 150th anniversary, and because of that, this one is actually something that it used to sell for more, but because of the 150th anniversary edition and the fact that that's also available and it looks the same on the front, that kind of saturated the market a little bit for these. So it's got a great bit of information on the back about the progress and the way the B&O Railroad grew. It's now part of CSX Corporation, but it was actually the first railroad to use steam rail for passengers starting in 1830, and you could actually go 17 miles an hour, and people were scared to death. Fun piece for a railroad collector. I've got a bunch of railroad collectors. I just sold a ton of railroad china out in Washington State, so I always look for it. This is another cafe ware piece, and this one went for $15.50. And I had mentioned in the initial video when I showed this piece that, well, Artie Shaw used to play there. It was a big jazz era club, so maybe it'll be somebody involved with jazz who's interested. Maybe it'll be someone who's interested in Cleveland history because the Golden Pheasant is no longer there. It's a parking lot now, but it was a huge ballroom and a very important gathering spot and had great Chinese food apparently in its time. But, in fact, it ended up going to someone in New York who actually is of Chinese descent and was very interested in the connection to their culture in that regard. So it just goes to show you that when you have something that's cross-collectible, you don't know who the ultimate collector will be, but it gives you more opportunities to sell. If this was a regular cafe ware sugar bowl from any older plain old restaurant, it probably would have sold for about $5 or $7. So I thought this was interesting, and I'm glad that it went to somebody. I got to give her a little bit of history and information on this because, again, she didn't buy it with the same thought in mind that I had, and so she was really excited to learn more. I'm going to come to this one next because this was a really nice surprise in terms of how it did. It's a wonderful original autograph photograph of Ingrid Bergman from The Bells of St. Mary's. This was the movie that she won her second Oscar for. It's signed and dated 1945. I was not sure in my brief attempt to research this piece. I mean, it was obvious what it was. It was obvious it was a real signature. I could not figure out at first who Jimmy Cottrell was, but this sold to somebody who was giving it as a gift to somebody who's a big movie buff. And boy, he really fought for it because it went on 12 bids and it went for $405, which is a little more than I thought she could go for. I knew Ingrid Bergman early signatures were good. Well, it turns out Jimmy Cottrell was someone who worked on the crew of The Bells of St. Mary's. And so that was the thing that was appealing to them. And that was what made this go for the amount it did, is that it was actually a little more personal and a little more inside. And so I just find that really fascinating, and I am so glad that it went to somebody who really loves and understands it. This piece, on the other hand, sold for more than I thought as well on 12 bids, and it is just because it's fun. This is the New Yorker's idea of the United States of America. You can see the whole joke is that everybody in New York, and at the time they say there are 7 million people, and that they see the world as being very New York-centric. Well, that made sense because in 1939, a lot of people who were born in New York had never left New York. And so that did seem like the entire world, and everybody from the world was going there, and it was a world center, and it still is. And so because of that, in the 70s, the New Yorker had the view from 9th Street on its cover, a very famous thing that honestly I think the artist might have gotten a little inspiration from this, because it's got the same sort of idea of we're in New York and everything else is far away and we don't really understand what it is. I like this map because they have Oregon and Washington in the wrong place. Montana's up in Canada somewhere, they think. They're not really sure where anything is. Alaska's pretty close to Montana and Oregon and Washington, isn't it? And that's the joke. So I thought it was lots of fun. Whoever got it thought it was lots of fun. And they paid $81 on 12 bids, which was a little more than I expected. Another Fenton piece, this one sold for a very good price, and it went to a viewer, and I'm very pleased that she got it. It's a hard piece to find. It does glow in the tips of the ears and the tail. It does glow the cadmium, but just at the very tips. A lot of times these reddish, ruddy colors only glow at the tips. But the natural line of animals was done because the decorators at Fenton said, you know, we might be able to get people interested in these if they looked more like the real animals. Not everybody wants a pink and orange bird with flowers painted on it. So they started doing some of the natural lines. This one, let's take a look, was painted by D. Frederick, and that's a good name to look for because D. Frederick was one of the few male painters, and you had to be good to get to do the natural lines because this was something a little more special. It wasn't just sort of the standard flower. So this was a good piece, an interesting piece, and a little different piece. And I was very glad to see that it sold for a very nice price, $203 on 20 bids. This was another buy it now. It sold right away. I figured it would. We only put $15 on it, but that's about what the night lights go for. These are from 1983, and there was one with Yoda, which I sold at a show, and another one that I sold at a show, and then I put this one online because, well, it's Darth Vader, and we just had to. I'm going to have another Darth Vader item coming on this month's top 20, so take a look at that when that comes out. But this is original and never been off the card, and went for $15 buy it now on one bid. This was also a buy it now. I wanted to do a couple of things from the Olympics and wanted to do them together even though they were 20 years apart, because they both have in common that parts of these Olympics, well, they were canceled. In the case of the 1980 Summer Games, we and 65 other countries canceled our participation because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And also, I think in retrospect, maybe a thought that it might not be safe for our athletes to be there under those circumstances. I think it was a little more than politics, maybe, although it certainly looked like it was all about politics. Squaw Valley, on the other hand, well, we don't say that word anymore, excuse me, because it's a not nice word for a part of a woman's anatomy, as it turns out, but there wasn't any thought about that. And as you can tell with the skiing Native American woman and daughter, there wasn't a whole lot of thought about cultural appropriation at all in 1960 when the Winter Olympics were done. It was pretty amazing. It's the only Winter Olympics that did not have a bobsled course, because Squaw Valley was nothing when they got the Olympics, and they had to build it all from scratch. And the bobsled course they thought was too complicated, and they couldn't guarantee that it would stay cold enough for it to be safe. Now they sold for one bid for the reserve price. I had this at a reserve. It did not sell at the reserve, and then I had somebody contact me afterwards and said, "I'm so sorry, I had to go out of town. I really wanted those. What was your reserve?" And when I told her, she said, "Oh, absolutely, I'll take them." So I'm so glad they're finding a nice home. They are Napoleon Capodimonte. They are 19th century. It is a good price for what it is. I certainly was asking more for them when I had them at shows, but I'm concerned after my last problem with a similar pair about shipping and handling. So I decided, now that I have a better idea how to ship these safely after my last mistake, I wanted to go ahead and get them gone. It's got one flower that has a little bit of a leaf missing, and so far that seems to be the only damage. Notice the N mark, which you'll see on Capodimonte even of the 1970s in the crown. That does stand for Napoleon, but the 19th century mark has this crown with this sort of open looping design that you see. And so these are early, sometime between the 1830s and the 1930s. But I think that from where they were obtained, probably looking at about 1850 to 1870 for a date on these. They're just wonderful. I'm glad that they have a home, and I will be getting them sent out tomorrow, because we just got all of this resolved. And then here's one other piece. This piece did not sell. I was only asking $19. I think that maybe I ran some people off with my title, because I found it amusing that there were two male lions, but I think maybe the people who collect this were a little less amused. I did sell the other two pieces I had at shows, so I will just put this in my regular inventory or at the antique mall here in Kentucky, and it should go pretty quickly, I think. Now to the distressing news, or at least something that I think you all ought to know about. This is really important, I think, because this is going to happen, unfortunately, maybe to me and maybe to you. So this was the other piece that sold. This piece is a wonderful Fenton piece, a very hard piece to find with lots of glass frit. It looked amazing under a black light, and you'll have to see it again when I relist it, which I will be doing, because all of the frit turns a purple color and then the rest of it fluoresces green. So it was really amazing, and because of that, it attracted a lot of attention. It was painted by Shaw. I had offers of $700 from 6 different people before it even was an hour old in the listing, and I said to all of them, no, you'll have to bid, because I was a little suspicious, because they all offered the same price and it all happened so fast. And I thought, that's interesting. But we let it roll, Beautiful piece. It got up to about $825, and in the last, I think, 5 to 10 minutes, it suddenly shot up from $825 to $1,825. And everybody who was watching it was like, wow, that's so great, that's so exciting. And I thought, this is not good. It's going up way too fast. Somebody is manipulating this. And that's exactly what happens. And it really frustrates me because I would like to be able to block people with no feedback from bidding on these types of things, but I have not been able to figure out how to do that without cutting out people who maybe have small feedback numbers because they're fairly new to eBay, but would be qualified buyers. The only thing that was in English when the invoice or the request came through was the address in Portland, the P.O. box I was supposed to ship it to when it was paid. So I sent invoices, I used translator, I communicated 4 different times, and the buyer did not pay. And this is something to be aware of. There is a lot of interest in Fenton amongst Chinese buyers, and for the most part, they're wonderful customers. But when you see something go up really, really, really fast at the last minute like that, and it goes way beyond what you think, gosh, I really wasn't thinking that could be worth that much money, that is often a ploy where one person has decided they are just going to make sure the other person doesn't get it, but then they realize that they massively overpaid and they don't pay their bill. And this has happened a lot to a friend of mine who deals in Chinese art and artifacts. In fact, he says if it goes over $5,000, the likelihood is 50-50 that he'll get paid. So something to be aware of. I don't really know what we can do about this. I have to believe at some point that eBay is going to really feel sad about missing out on, they would have gotten, about $250 in commission, plus a $75 reserve fee that I had put in and a bunch of other stuff. But instead it all got refunded and now we get to start all over again. So just something to be aware of in the marketplace. I have met a few really wonderful Chinese buyers through Heidi at Rosie's Auction House because she's been having similar circumstances, but so far hers have all been payers. So I know that there's a lot of good customers out there, but we do occasionally get a bad apple, and I don't know exactly what we're to do about that. At some point, I imagine eBay will become frustrated enough that they will do something like some of the other platforms where the payment is automatic. And I have to say, honestly, when I buy on eBay, the payment is automatic. And most people, the payment is automatic. I'm not really sure why a customer with 0 feedback is allowed the luxury of not having automatic payments set up. So, some questions for eBay. We'll see if answers come. I have a feeling as this becomes more and more of a problem, eBay will change its policies and we will see them be a little stiffer about that. But in the meantime, overall, the results were great. We sold, I think, 16 out of 20 items. The one camera set that we didn't sell, the big one with all the pieces in the case, was because I just couldn't really seem to describe it fully enough for people to understand what they were getting. So I realize now I have a little more learning to do before I relist that piece. And learning is part of why we do this. So thank you for coming along with me. I hope you learned a few things and had some fun with this. And we will see you again soon from somewhere in the world of antiques and vintage, and very soon with another level 2, level 3 member bonus video. So if you are a level 2 or 3 member, please look for that in the community tab. And if you are not, you can go to the join button if you see that, or go down below the dash line in the descriptions of any video, and it'll tell you all about memberships and how you can join.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video, and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help, and we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.